Sophia Bay Engineering, MIET, SMIET, is currently serving as Head Energy Research Center, Comsat University, Lahore Campus, Pakistan. She has been the Vice Chair of IEEE, Lahore Section, and member of Pakistan Engineering Council's Women Engineers Subcommittee Lahore. Her research interests include work on non-monotone multiple access techniques, smart grid communication techniques, multi-carrier modulation techniques, and application of wavelength-based modulation techniques in the wireline digital subscriber line, power line communication networks, and in 5G wireless communication networks. She has published papers in several areas, including NO for 5G, power line communication, digital modulation techniques, etc. She holds a BSc in Engineering, Electrical Engineering from University of Engineering and Technology, Takshila, Pakistan, and MS and PhD in Electronic Engineering from GIK Institute of Engineering Sciences and Technology, Tokyo, Pakistan. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Sophia Bay to speak about microgrids, the way forward for electrification of rural communities in Hawaii. Optimism.
Thank you. I would like to share my screen, and please let me know if you can hear me clearly. Hello, everyone. I would like to start by thanking the conference organizers of the International Conference on Industry 4.0 for developing the world challenges, gaps, and opportunities. So my talk is based on the topic of microgrids, which is actually one of the most feasible ways in terms of electrification of rural communities. And with the help of fourth industrial revolution, we can make it more effective as well as more feasible. So these are the contents of my presentation. Before I start my presentation, I would like to just show you my campus, which is located in the Lahore city. And this is the campus of Lahore of Comsat University Islamabad, which you can see the Mughal architecture and the lush green grounds. This is the vision and mission of my Energy Research Center, which I am actually representing right now. I'm head of the Energy Research Center at Comsat University Lahore campus. These are the focus areas of the Energy Research Center, which deal with smart grids, microgrids, computational mechanics, biofuels, biotechnology, energy audits, renewable energy, etc. We have a three-pronged strategy by focusing on research and development, awareness trainings, and industrial and government collaboration in our research center. And we have been working for the last few years for the promotion of innovation technologies in energy. So we're coming to my presentation. I would just like to start with what is the situation of global energy sector and Pakistan's status right now. So let me just minimize this, yes. So as you can see over here, what is happening in terms of energy in the global sector? We have a huge population, which is actually growing day by day, which in turn requires more economic development. And then we have increased energy consumption because of economic development and greater dependency on the fossil fuels, which in turn results in greater GHG emissions and carbon footprint. So the result is that we have climate change, and we are one of those 9 most vulnerable countries which are subject to climate change, although we have less than 1% share in our carbon, in the carbon footprint. So the need, what is the global energy need? The need is that the energy should be abundant, it should be affordable, and it should be clean. Everyone should have access to energy at an affordable cost, and the resources should be clean energy so that we do not add to the pollution, the environmental pollution, and we have reduced global house gas emissions, and overall carbon footprint is reduced. The Pakistan's energy status, as you can see over here, we are one of the most energy intensive countries compared to our neighboring countries in terms of not only our utilization, but also our generation. And most of the market is fluxed with cheap devices which are actually not energy efficient. So this is the situation now that our energy mix consists of more thermal resources as compared to renewable. You can see over here, this is a 2021 statistics which show thermal, hydro, and nuclear much greater as compared to renewable sources in the energy mix. Then comes the utilization and consumption of Pakistan from 2020 to 2021. As you can see, most of the consumption is in the residential and industrial sector, and then there's the agriculture and commercial sectors. So this is the scenario right now in which we are talking about going towards microgrids. And then this is the global situation where energy trilemma shows the three parameters of energy security, energy equity, and environmental sustainability of energy systems. And this is the system which is actually weighs all the countries on this score. Pakistan, unfortunately, lies in the bottom 25%. However, Sri Lanka, it has a 68th percentile and has a much better performance in terms of security and equity of energy. So what is not only Pakistan's energy issues, but the whole, you can say, South Asian countries have these issues in terms of energy and in particular electricity. We need it to be accessible and affordable for our masses. It needs to be a reliable supply without any planned or unplanned outages. There shouldn't be any cascaded outages that in turn lead to blackouts. Transmission and distribution losses, which are actually quite a lot in terms of Pakistan, you can say we have about 22% losses in our distribution companies. So these need to be reduced, and there's then the need to supply clean energy and reduce the carbon footprints. This can be done by utilizing distributed energy resources. And how to utilize these energy resources? We need to implement innovative and emerging technologies to do that. And those innovative and emerging technologies, how they can help us is in terms of, one of the solutions is microgrids. So as you can see in the figure, microgrids is actually an assembly of interconnected loads and distributed energy resources with a clearly defined electrical boundaries that act as a single controllable entity with respect to the grid. So the microgrids can be off-grid or on-grid, that they can be islanded, or they can be connected to the national grid for backup. And here, why we should go for microgrids? What's the benefit for going for a microgrid? We all know that as the supply and demand gap or balance is disturbed, we need to improve it in terms of adding spin-off reserves, or we need to add more power plants, big power plants. The resiliency can be improved by utilizing alternative power resources for delivery to the loads. We can employ distributed energy resources at an optimized cost of fuel cost, weather, and locational marginal pricing. And then we can lower the emissions. So because there is more, you can say, feasibility of employing distributed renewable energy resources within a microgrid, we can reduce the overall carbon emissions. Then we can have grid firming, since we have intermittent resources like wind and solar PV included in this renewable energy resources. We can apply other resources, like we can integrate ancillary services so that we can do grid firming and we can have more reliable supply. We can reduce the peak demand reduction, not only within the microgrid, but also in the national grid, so that most of the load that goes, some of the loads which are actually part of the national grid are now separately being addressed in microgrids. So, and then we can have more reliability, because we being a localized smaller grid, it can be easily monitored, and the control is better as compared to the national grid. Then we can have non-dispatchable generators, that is the solar PV or wind generators can be utilized to meet the demand response. In the last decade, we all know this fact quite clearly, that solar and wind the prices have reduced by about 90%, and the storage by 50%. So these technologies are fast becoming mature, and they are bankable and dependable technologies now. The microgrid global market, it's on the rise from about $9.8 billion in 2013 to about $35 billion in 2020, according to Transparency Market Research. So these are some of the reasons that we can employ, microgrids. According to this data supplied by Homer Software, which is a software particularly for microgrid design, there are about 650 microgrids can be considered all over Pakistan, as you can see in this map. So these are the areas, potential areas where we do not need to supply electricity through long transmission lines and distribution lines. We can save that cost. We can install or deploy microgrids where the local generation can be utilized, and the locally generated resources can be utilized to supply power to the local consumers. So we can always save this cost of supplying them through long distribution and transmission lines. So as you can see over here, microgrid is a multi-layered system. In this figure, you can see there are two boundaries or interconnections. One is in white color, the other is the brown color or orange color. The one in the white color is the energy network, the other one is the data network. So we have the centralized data or utility center, which is connected to renewable and non-renewable resources, and then to the consumers, as well as to the utility. And at the end, you can see it is also connected towards the transmission and distribution network for backup. So each layer over here is actually highly correlated to the other layer. And the performance of each layer in turn then translates in the overall performance of the grid. However, the basic layer is the automatic metering infrastructure, which provides the data that is to be analyzed, that is to be utilized for better monitoring and control of the microgrid. So when we talk about microgrid technologies, we talk about in terms of these three main parameters, or you can say three main technologies. We have distributed energy resources, we have grid digitalization, and then we have demand side management and demand side response. So distributed energy resources, these help us with the microgrid control techniques. Information and communication technology is also part of it. Digitalization includes Internet of Things, big data analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So I will be deliberating upon these one by one. So this we have talked about distributed energy resources. We have talked about now decentralizing the generation part and not having just the conventional. What was the conventional system? The conventional system was having a big power plant that generating, like in Pakistan, we have two large hydel power plants, and those are then generating and transmitting it throughout the national grid, which start from the north and down to the south in the country. So what happens? We have large transmission and distribution losses along the way. And then distributed energy resources like solar PV or wind, they are difficult to incorporate in this national grid. And then these can be much easily and feasibly integrated within the microgrid. So this is one platform which helps us optimize energy system in terms of electrical, thermal, fuel, water, communication, physical scales. These DERs, they include micro turbines, fuel cells, photovoltaic systems, traditional internal combustion engines, and so on. So there are a huge host of resources that can be incorporated. They can be renewable, they can be non-renewable, but mostly renewable can be utilized. So we can have sophisticated management tools which are helping us incorporate these DERs within the microgrid in terms of not only controlling and communicating about these resources, but also in terms of flexible price, better environment and system efficiency for the microgrid. Then large-scale market adoption of DER may impact the grid's reliability. So if we have better incorporation or greater share of DERs within the energy mix for a microgrid, it surely will help in reliability of the grid instead of just relying upon the fossil fuel or the conventional resources or for the backup from the grid, for the national grid. Then specific areas that must be addressed that include control and dispatch strategies for DERs, strategies to ensure safety and protection of the grid, and the role of power electronic interfaces and devices within the grid. These are some of the research areas which the researchers all over the world are still trying to solve, trying to propose solutions. Then assessing grid reliability impacts requires a systematic approach. So this is not something that we focus on one aspect of the microgrid like control technologies or other aspect like communication technologies. It should be a holistic, systematic approach for which we need to implement an efficient and reliable microgrid. What are going to be the benefits? The benefits are going to the consumer in terms of cost saving, to the utility also in terms of cost saving, and to the national exchequer. And then reduction in terms of emissions by moving away from fossil fuels to renewable sources. and more control for the consumers, as we all know, we have a mushroom growth of solar PV in our part of the world, where the cost of electricity is going quite high, and the consumers are becoming prosumers by installing rooftop solar PVs, and they are actually also returning the additional generation to the grid. So this, when it's a microgrid as compared to the national grid, all things scale down, and this becomes more reliable and much more easier to incorporate as compared to the national grid. So this is a famous duck curve, which is actually a bit different. We all know what the duck curve is about. The duck curve is about that when we have solar or renewable generation and there is less demand. However, when the demand increases in the evening, these generations are also reduced. However, you can see when we incorporate distributed energy storage technologies as well. So these are three curves, as you can see over here. The base curve is the base without any PV or without any electric vehicles. It's the black line you can see over here. So it's the supply and demand with hours, as you can see from the x-axis to y-axis. When we have PV and EV, we have two issues shown over here. One is that when we have PV and EV, if we start charging the EV in the evening, there's a peak load, as you can see towards the extreme right of the figure. However, when in the bottom part, you can see when there's more PV generation, there is this danger, or there's this aspect of reverse power flow to the utility in case of when there's less demand but more generation. However, we can flatten these curves by introducing distributed energy storage techniques as well. So this the impact can be much more you can say flattened or reduced by introducing DES as well as this PV and EVs. So we come to control. As we talk about microgrid, there are 2 to 3 main parameters. We need to include DERs. We need, when we are including DERs or distributed energy resources, we need a very effective and reliable control. And then we need to communicate as well. So firstly, let's talk about control. Control could be centralized or control could be decentralized. If the control is centralized, we have a central control which connects to all distribution energy resources. It looks at the demand situation. It looks at the generation from these DERs, and it starts by optimizing the generation from these resources. Either it could be, what happens is that we could go from one source to another source. We can have more than one resource incorporated to meet the demand, like solar PV during the day, in addition to wind if it's windy. We could have other resources also incorporated, and we can also utilize storage techniques to flatten or to take care of the intermittency of these resources. So what happens is the central controller collects the data from all DERs at the same time, runs frequency and voltage stability logic, and based on the results, issue appropriate commands accordingly. On the other hand, this is about the central controller. What happens if we have decentralized control? With decentralized control, it's about peer-to-peer communication network between the DER assets. So what happens? One asset is talking to the other one, and they are also talking between themselves and with the controller. So what happens? We have redundant structure, and this redundancy helps a higher level of efficiency and controllability and reliability in terms of control techniques. So here you can see this is a simple, you can say, classification of control between primary control, secondary, and tertiary. About the time it takes from microsecond and millisecond for primary to secondary, and minutes in tertiary. How the functions are also different. For primary control, we need to switch from DERs, switch logic. We can have local DER control. For secondary, our SCADA system is there and load control is there. And for tertiary, we can do load forecasting. We can have optimization for dispatch, and we can do modeling as well. So these are 3 types of control that can be applied for better DER management in microgrids. Now comes the information and communication technologies for the microgrids. This is something which is critical for the reliable and efficient operation of the microgrid. The techniques have to be actually reliable, fast, secure, and sometimes you need very fast real-time communication in terms of, let's say, a fault occurs, or sometimes when there's voltage or frequencies instability, there's this danger of having the microgrid shut down. So we need to communicate very fast, so there's no data loss. We have fast and secure communication. And since it's a complex system, the challenge of communication is also complex. And then maybe one technique in one part or more than one technique can be utilized, like wireless communication, like power line communication, or like optical fiber communication. So let's say if you are looking for a fast, reliable, and real-time communication, fiber optics is one very good option. However, it's actually a bit expensive one. Similarly, if you integrate wireless communication, the RF technology, the cellular services within the grid, what happens? These become scalable as we expand the grid. This is also expanded with it, and the cost is actually relatively reduced. However, there's a trade-off between communication delay and control performance within the microgrid when we utilize these technologies. So we have to look at the application, the trade-off, and what is actually vital within the microgrid. Is it for a fault that we need to communicate? Is it the real, just the supply and demand or the consumption data, which is actually not very critical? Once it can be transmitted in real time, but the delay doesn't matter that much. However, in some where we may be switching from one resource to another, and that should be a very quick one, we need very fast communication. So these are various communication technologies, or various technologies may be adapted in terms a hybrid solution may be there. Internet of Things promises low cost and ubiquitous communication within the DER. So IoT is the heart of it. IoT devices which not only collect data but also communicate it to the next device or to a central controller. These are at the heart of a microgrid. This is one proposal I submitted to a funding agency. As you can see, for the microgrid to be digitized, and digitization is actually something we look at when we talk about fourth industrial revolution, the IoT, and the data analysis, the data collection, the data analysis, the data, the machine learning techniques to analyze it, artificial intelligence techniques to learn from the data and do better and informed decision making. And then overall impact is an efficient system in terms of socio-economic impact on the society. So we are talking about utilizing fourth industrial revolution in terms of not only digitized devices, but also the techniques or technologies or algorithms which are applied within the fourth industrial revolution, and then improving the efficiency, the reliability and security, energy security within a microgrid. So AMI is the heart of it. We've talked about how we can, it's the basic layer, which actually is a smart metering. Every household can have a smart meter. Every consumer can have a smart meter that can actually transmit the data in a certain time frame to the utility for a better data management system and energy management system. And the smart meters, they are able to not only send data, but also receive it. So within a microgrid, if the utility or the controller within the utility wants to perform a certain operation, let's say on the generation side or on the consumer side, these meters or this automatic metering infrastructure can be very useful, and it can become very handy. So the data collection can be there when distributed energy resources come into play in a system like this. This system provides an improved solution to the economically optimized contribution in the overall energy mix, so that we can utilize those DERs much more effectively when we have data about them. And how to collect the data is through this AMI. Then Internet of Things, as we just talked about, smarter meter is one example of Internet of Things. We can deploy IoT devices to assess the health of our resources. We can deploy IoT devices to monitor the load profile of our users. We can deploy IoT devices to collect data from various entities within the microgrid. So better monitoring and control, we need the data, and where to get the data from is through these IoT devices. So first the data is collected, then it comes to a platform where the data is actually filtered, converted into meaningful data, meaningful information. That can be about weather, it could be about heating set points, it could be car usage, it could be how social activity is taking place within the consumers of the microgrid. We can expect better load forecasting if we collect this data. So algorithms then come into play, and they provide essential decision making by using accurate prediction of production, consumption, and grid energy tariff. One thing that I've actually not touched upon is that flexible tariff within the microgrid that can be easily changed, flexibly supplied information to the consumer. The consumer will have knowledge about the flexible grid. We talk about the same thing microgrid in the smart grid, but for the microgrid, again, the scale is smaller. So the implementation of it is quite, you can say, is easier. It is facilitated by these devices with the help of fourth industrial revolution. So what are the areas of energy opportunities by using IoT? We have improved self-sufficiency by controlling increasing self-consumption. We take advantage of flexible energy tariffs. We optimize the EV fleet management and vehicle to grid. So what is the tariff right now? Is it good for the vehicle to send its electricity from the storage device back to the grid, or sell it or charge the vehicle at a low off-peak rate hours? So this is what can be done. Improve load balancing and peak shaving, and then optimizing the balance of the national grid. So we've talked about all this, and these are the opportunities which are there. In all these opportunities, IoT plays a very critical and central role. Then when we have the data from the IoTs, what to do about the data? We have data analytics and microgrid modernization. So we can do various kind of modeling. We can do descriptive models to describe the consumer behavior for demand response programs. We can do diagnostic models to understand specific consumer behavior and analyze their power related decision. Let's say if I'm a country like in South Asia, we are a country where the summers are very hot, and we have this tendency to use air conditioning a lot. So what's the actual decision of the consumer to utilize air conditioning according to temperature of according to weather conditions, or according to their social conditions? Are they working at home, or they're working in their offices, and there are less number of people at home? So this actually, the social fabric also matters. Then we can create predictive future consumer decisions and also predict the power need. And prescriptive models can provide high-level analytics to influence smart grid marketing, engagement strategies, and decision-making. Again, the data is there, but unless it is converted into meaningful data using analytics and modeling, then it will not be useful. Machine learning algorithms can be applied for data. Let's say, for example, for data clustering, we cannot, unless the data that is generated from the smart metering is huge, going to be huge data. Let's say it can be on the consumer side as well as it can be on the generation side. So the microgrid, and we can utilize machine learning techniques to cluster that data. We can, let's say example is that we can identify low voltage feeders with similar load patterns for distribution system operators. We can use machine learning algorithms to understand the underlying structure, gain useful insight, detect anomalies. Let's say very important factor. There's a theft going on in within your microgrid. There's a certain load profile. There's a certain load supply balance, which is actually a normal average pattern. However, there's an anomaly that occurs. Maybe that anomaly could be a fault, or this anomaly could be a theft. This can be easily detected using machine learning algorithms. Then load forecasting and predictions. They are much more effective when we utilize these machine learning algorithms. Artificial intelligence techniques, they can help us to utilize. Once we have the data, we have the patterns, we learn from these patterns, and then we apply artificial intelligence techniques to predict about, let's say, about the health, safety, or maintenance of our DERs, about what is happening within the geographical area, what's happening with the weather, the vegetation growth, the voltage and wire compensation and optimization can take place. If a fault occurs, how much time it is going to be to restore the fault. And there's this example of what they did in Georgia Tech was they applied AI technology so that they could find out the most suitable EV chargers according to utilization pattern of the EVs. So this is a simple breakthrough in terms of getting the data first, acquiring it, monitoring, using machine learning algorithms and artificial intelligence techniques. Load forecasting is also very important in terms of tomorrow's, let's say, day ahead planning, year ahead planning. And what happens is a lot of parameters have now come into the conventional techniques of load forecasting, and those parameters need to be incorporated so a better and accurate modeling, and then a better and accurate planning and forecasting. So the load forecasting of electricity in terms of microgrid is absolutely essential, since we need to incorporate DERs. which DER is going to be utilized to optimize the utilization of DERs to help the intermittency by distributed energy storage devices. This is something which is absolutely critical for the sustainable and reliable operation of the microgrid. And the big data for short-term and medium-term load forecasting has an absolutely significant role in this case. Then we come to demand response. So the utilities, if they are working in a microgrid, they will have a demand side management program, and they can also you can say shave off their peaks. On the other hand, the consumers can voluntarily opt to reduce their loads, and in turn they may be given credits or some financial benefits in this term. So the peak clipping can happen in case of demand response when the user is actually having a two-way communication, having a role in the flexible deregulated energy market and electricity market, and the flexible pricing can help the user change his or her load utilization patterns. This is one work of optimal demand supply, energy management, smart grids and microgrids. One of my PhD students, Mr. Namula from Lancaster University, he just graduated from there, completed his PhD, and his work was on optimal demand supply management. What he did was that he worked on demand side management, and we've just discussed about demand side management. This is the energy management on the utility side, because it's well known that 1 unit saved at home is greater than equivalent to 3 units saved at the power plant. So the demand side management allows the utility not to incorporate large power plants or large power resources at the peak or at the time of peak demand, instead to flatten that peak or utilize other resources to incorporate, so that the peak that the demand can be met without incorporating or having very high you can say cost power plants incorporated just for the peak, meet the peak demand. So what my student did was he formulated this system, which consists of smart appliances, energy management controller, energy predictor and load predictor, demand response manager, smart meter, and two-way communication. What he did differently was that he classified the loads into baseline loads, regular loads, and controllable loads. And this was something when he applied optimization algorithms. This helped him in terms of better performance, because these loads, they are baseline loads, like these are always there. These are the essential loads. Regular loads are also there because people may want to turn on such loads regularly, but there are controllable and non-essential loads that can be managed. And these controllable loads then make quite a difference when we talk about energy management. So the energy management controller, what it does is communicates with energy predictor and load predictor. So there are load prediction and energy prediction algorithms coming into play. Demand side management receives pricing signal and shares the energy management with the energy management controller. So the prices are assumed to be flexible. EMC collects the power consumption pattern from appliances, and then there's automatically scheduling of these appliances at off-peak and peak hours at the within this EMC energy management controller. So when he applied this whole, he modeled the system and applied optimization techniques, he had some good results. And I hope the results are a bit visible to you, because these are a bit small figures. On the very left side, we have energy cost. You will see multiple graphs shown over here. So we have real-time pricing. We have those shown with some algorithms, optimization algorithm, like genetic algorithm, like Gray Wolf optimization algorithm, and then the proposed one you can see in the light green in the bottom. So the energy cost by this hybrid application of these two algorithms, and due to the fact that we classified the load, we have lower energy cost. In the second figure, you will see the load profiles. There are a lot of peaks you can see in unscheduled, you can say unscheduled loads. However, when we apply these algorithms, these optimized algorithms, there's complete peak shaving, and there are no peaks shown over here in terms of load. In the third figure, you will see from the left side, again, its cost in terms of cents per kilowatt hour. Again, because this is the cost multiplied by the load profile, and this is the third figure, which is the product of the first two. Again, you can see that the optimization has resulted in lower cost in terms of cents per kilowatt hour, because we have shaved off those peaks. Lastly, there's the peak to average ratio on the different schemes shown over here. In green is the work that the student has performed. And in terms of unscheduled, which is shown in red, the genetic algorithm shown in blue, and gray wolf showed in purple. The proposed one is performing better in terms of peak to average ratio optimization. He also worked on other techniques of load forecasting. I was just showing the demand side management part over here. So this one was his work regarding electricity load forecasting, and he did some, he collected data, then feature extraction, and then he applied enhanced convolution neural networks on this classification. And because of this feature extraction, feature selection, extraction, and classification, and applying ECNN, he obtained higher accuracy and reduced dimensional rate and computational efficiency because of these algorithms. His work is available online in various publications. If someone wants to access that, they can please contact me, and they will be made available. So we come to the conclusions and recommendations in the end, having discussed various technologies within the microgrids, why microgrids are necessary, technologies within the microgrids. Let me just conclude over here. So looking at our part of the world, we have deployment of AC-DC grids, hybrid grids, or DC grids. These are the solution in terms of giving you an optimal or affordable access to the masses of population in our countries, which can be an economic solution. How it can be made more economical and reliable is through IoT-based data acquisition and analytics, particularly in these rural or very remote site microgrids. We can categorize with reference to electricity needs and regional resources. We can have a study carried out that can categorize what are the regional resources, what are the areas which are remote from the national grid, and it's better to have a microgrid over there. So let's categorize our resources, and let's see which is the best site to have these microgrids installed. We can deploy demand side management and demand response technologies to further improve the reliability, the access, and the flexible cost or prices available to the consumers within this grid. We can have customized optimal reliable DI utilization for the regional microgrid. That means having multiple resources and putting them together and having a control technique is not just enough. We need to optimize the utilization of the resources for an efficient and reliable utilization. Remote monitoring based on IoT for protection, reliable operation, and preventive maintenance. This is absolutely critical, because without this, we will cause failure, etc. Government to motivate studies to perform formulate policy framework on sustainable microgrids and establishment. And this can be done by various studies, like institutes like us, universities like us, or academia can be involved to do these studies and then help government formulate the framework. And government to formulate consortia of academia, industry, and government and non-government help us. With this, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'm available.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sophia Day, for enlightening us with your knowledge. If anyone has questions to ask, you may ask. It seems there are no questions. Thank you again, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I would again like to thank the organizers, and it was a lovely experience presenting over here. Best of luck for your rest of the conference. Thank you.
Now we are moving on to the session 5 on concept of smart cities. I would like to take the opportunity to introduce the first speaker of this session, Dr. Nuriye Onlu, Director of YTE Turkey, who will be joining us online. She is currently working as a Deputy Director at YTE. She took part in Air Force Information System, e-Passport, e-Government Gateway, e-Government Strategy and Action Plan, Public ICT Investment Planning, National Smart City Strategy and Action Plan, Digital Maturity Assessment and Guidance, Integrated Public Financial Management, Turkey, Agricultural Credit Cooperatives, Digital Transformation Planning, and Digital Academy Projects. The areas of work include enterprise architecture, needs identification and solution planning, digital transformation, digital governance, digital strategy and policy development, and digital capacity building. Dr. Nuri Ondu graduated from Tech University Industrial Engineering undergraduate program and completed her master's degree in the same department. Now, I cordially invite Dr. Nuri Ondu to address the gathering on Industry 4.0 maturity assessment models and manifest on national digital maturity assessment models for SMEs.
Good morning, all participants. I am Nuriye from Turkey. As represented before, I work as a Deputy Director of Software Technologies Research Institute. By the way, there's a, I think, mistake in the program. The title of the presentation was changed. I will talk about digital transformation of cities, the smart city concept. I hope this will also, have this will also beneficial in this organization. At first, I will talk about some metrics representing the global challenges for cities. Then after, I will talk about why the city concept is solution to all these challenges. Then after, I will talk about the drivers, especially important for preparing the digital strategy at the national level. And then after, I will give some, important policies that will lead the smart city strategies. And at last, the approach to the solution in implementing those digital smart city policies, strategies. I will talk about those approaches. Now, in this slide, there are some metrics about the current state of the cities in a global level. 50% of the population lives in cities, and this proportion is has an expected annual growth rate for 2050 with 20%. And in Europe, there are 1,000 cities which has a population of 50,000 and more. By the way, in Turkey, 300 of them are 300 cities which has a population of 50,000 and more in Turkey. On the other hand, the cities covers the area of the world with 2%. So as a result, we can say on the world, the area being used by the cities with a high population with respect to the rural areas. So these metrics leads to some problems, such as increasing demand for energy, as I said, increasing population density, reliability problems in fuel supply, and there are scarce resources in cities, and the prices of the goods and services are much more with respect to the rural area. And also there's a problem with increased individual mobility, and there are also some social challenges. And at last, we are all, for the last years, we are all talking about climate change. On the other hand, these are also the solutions to these problems. They are the root causes and they are the solutions. Urbanization, innovation, economic development, and the interaction with the ecosystem. These leads cities to, design some solutions, implement some solutions in cities. Let's have a deep dive to why cities are solutions. Because there's a high density population in the cities. So with a solution implemented, then many people could benefit from it. So it leads to increase the productivity. And also by the infrastructures, for instance, implemented in the cities, there will be an effective use of resources, and also there's a research and development capability in the cities, and for instance, via innovation, new products and services could be developed, designed, and it leads to increase in economy activity. So these 5 key features of sustainable societies lead to positive feedback loops and makes these the solution of future. In addition, these are complex adaptive systems. Via this phrase, I mean, it may see individuals and networks as proactive actors and planners. Each determines their own desired future state, but each able to adapt for the collective realization of those plans. Simply, all these features shape the possibilities for a variety of potential developments. And in complex systems, there is perceptual richness, and it satisfies people by this complex systems can be psychologically more satisfying to people than simpler environments. In addition, in those systems with features such as hierarchy, symmetry, asymmetry, flexibility, duplication, or specialization of different parts, also may be reusability. There is a functional capacity, and there is the synergy in the SDs, which creates the possibility that the whole is greater than the parts. If we look at the components of these complex adaptive system, there are layers. Of course, at the very core of this system, there is people. Here, I would like to notice with people viewpoint, individual and society, we should have 2 levels viewpoint, and also we should combine these 2 together. I mean, individual within a society. And behavior is here very important from the implementation of systems within the city, and around it to satisfy people, individual and society's needs, we need technologies, and the technologies combine together in a meaningful way, or should be interoperable and come up with technological systems. And those systems are used by urban government, and then they are regulated with legal and regulatory institutions. and via the policies and the strategies are guides those management. And of course, these are very important. These regulations has to be, or these strategies and policies has to be interconnected with the, or should regard the economic and social system and pressures. And at last, it is within an urban space, so it should consider ecological system and pressures. So all those, layers should be considered together while developing a smart city solution. And each of the layer, as you notice, is interconnected, and all the components within that layer and with the other layers, they also are also interact. And we should also do not forget that they all live together in the same urban space. This is not just physical, but digital, but psychological, but social. So these should be considered together with different viewpoints, with individually and also all together to solve the problems or to satisfy the needs of the cities. And all those layers and the components and the links between them has its own unique parameters, and those parameters are key to have models in developing the smart city solutions, and we should be aware of them beforehand, before developing the models which will create the smartness. And also the data regarding those parameters are key to implement those smart city solutions. So the system, its layers, the components within the layers and their links with each other, and their unique parameters, they are very important for developing a smart system, especially in smart city concept. These two are the main drivers in smart city concept. One is the sustainability, and the complexity and the speed of change brought by technology and innovation. It helps us in having that main driver, and the technology and innovation. It provides offers by new technology and innovative approaches. On the other hand, the cycle of the innovation cycle, their frequency or their period, it really changed for the last 200 years. For the this is a metric for the 2017. Now it is measured that the innovation cycle is less than 2 years. But in 1760, one urban innovation cycle took more than 50 years. This metric shows us that there's a big opportunity from the technology and innovation, especially in smart city concept. There are lots of smart city solutions, and because of that innovation cycle being less than 2 years, the number of that capacity, it increases. But on the other hand, the individuals or the society's adaptation, its cycle is the same. It is 10 to 15 years. So introducing a new innovation, introducing an innovative or technological, a new technology to a city, it is a good thing, but what about the adaptation of the individual and the society? We should also consider it. Why saying, complex adaptive system? This is a good example. Technology is one layer within that system, and people, individual and society is at the very core, and it is also one layer, and their adaptation cycles are different. So we should also consider this. Being agile in this concept is not a very good thing, especially in smart city, just because of that different adaptation cycles. It's an important thing to consider. So we should not be agile in developing smart city implementations in our countries. We should, have some precautions whether our society or individuals can adapt to that, innovation or technology in our cities, in our countries. Now, what we mean by digital transformation in smart city. At first, I would like to, summarize the previous slides. In cities, the cities compete in a globally interconnected economy and ensure the well-being of the residents in a sustainable way. This is the need. And we say smart city is the solution, and those solutions ensure interoperable systems. That means, data interchange without any human intervention between the machines and all kinds of systems in the city. And those interoperable systems develop with cooperation between stakeholders, and all those expectations of those stakeholders should be met. Their problems should be met, and not just now, not just now and near future, but it is with very far future, and also it should consider the memory of that city. And the data and expertise is the key for developing that smartness. It is done not a very easy thing. I mean, satisfying all those stakeholders in the city, and not just for now, but considering the memory and considering the future. And here, data and expertise is the key for developing that smartness. And smart city, with this need and solution phrases, aims to turn the current and future expectations and problems of the city into a triggering force in all spaces and systems of the city. And it aims also carrying out physical, social, and digital planning together. Another aim is identifying, anticipating, and meeting emerging challenges in a systematic, agile, and sustainable manner. And lastly, it aims building the necessary capacity to provide integrated service delivery and innovation across organizational borders within the city. Those four aims are very important when we all, check whether we satisfy those aims when we prepare the national level, Turkish national level smart city strategy, because it also summarizes the concept of smart city and the motivation behind it. So how do we guarantee it? We have monitoring and evaluation system. Also, we have a digital maturity assessment model. And all those aims, by the way, are represented by some metrics. And we have the current state of those metrics, and also we have the we also plan them what will be in the future, in the next 1 year, next 2 years, and for the next 5 years. And then we also track them via system. By the way, those parameters are grouped in 3. In the first group, the matrix represents the current state of the cities, and in the second group, the matrix represents the smart city activities, and in the third group, the metrics represent the impact of the smart city activities. So these 3 are combined together in a model, and it gives us whether that city with that current state and doing those smart city activities, does it really work by guaranteeing the impact metrics. So as you see, the monitoring and evaluating the smart city strategies are also being controlled by a smart model, by a mathematical model. And they are all related with those aims. Here, in fact, this approach is not a new thing that we found. Many of the countries or many of the international organizations working in the smart city concept, they have that approach. In this slide, I would like to represent them. There are, in fact, many models relating, considering the smart city. And here we benefit more from the British standards PAS smart city framework. And also here, I think I didn't put it here, also the Fraunhofer's Morgenstern framework. It was really very beneficial because they consider not just the business layer, but also the technology layer and the data layer, the application layer. So they have a holistic approach, but many of the maturity models, especially the consulting firms models, they are focused on just the business layer. And in fact, the strategy layer, not just it is above the business layer. And we find them very weak and not holistic. So BSI and Morgenstern framework, we get benefit from them. And we see that we should make it peculiar to Turkey. So we develop our own model by getting benefits from the BSI and the BSI's PAS framework and also the Morgenstern framework from Fraunhofer's. And we develop our digital maturity model. In fact, that maturity model is the very first version of the smart architecture, reference architecture. And that reference architecture is also the infrastructure of our smart city, national level smart city strategy. So by that way, by having an architecture, we know that which component is related with which other component. We know all those links, and this enables us to make a change management, because as I said in the previous slides, the cycles of different, change cycles of different components are different. So we should, make them work together in a synchronous way. So if we have a smart city architecture, then we know even with the smart city strategy or with the smart city projects and many other, things, we all relate all those activities with this smart city architecture, reference architecture. So it gives us how to, find out the impact of one change, of one component to another component or the whole system. So it's a very key point as far as in our experience. There are, by the way, when we started preparing the strategy, the very first thing and also very last thing is to define what is smart city, because with the aims, you should make a prioritization of those aims. Even you should maybe find out which are in the scope of your strategy. Not all of those aims could be within your strategy because of the resource restrictions. You should have a prioritization of those aims, so those affects the actions of your strategy, that prioritization. So that smart city definition of Turkey, in fact, indexes those aims, and all those actions are related with that definition. And at the very beginning, we go through the literature and find out some smart city definitions, and notice that every country has its own smart city definition. Even some cities have different smart city definitions from the country level smart city definition. By the way, the standards, frameworks, they also have different smart city definitions. And in this slide and in this slide, I give some very, the important smart city definitions. And we then prepare our smart city definition. This is Turkish smart city definition, the smart city definition, the Turkish strategy. It is more livable and sustainable cities that are implemented through stakeholder collaboration, that use new technologies and innovative approaches, that are justified based on data and expertise, and that produce solutions adding value to life by anticipating future problems and needs. This is our smart city definition. And then after, when we have the smart city definition peculiar to Turkey, we go through how we look, how we consider the city now, and how we are going to consider the city in terms of being smartness. And this represents how we consider the city now. Here, there is the citizen and the private sector. They get benefit from the services. There are different, capabilities of the city in terms of energy, waste, water, etc. And there are services. All of the services are, given within that silo. And also the data is within that silo, and the technology and infrastructure managing that data, it is also within that silo. So as you see, the technologies are not, or the infrastructure are not connected to have a holistic one service. And it is not citizen-oriented there is no connection with the system, and the systems are closed within that silo. And also, there is no connection with the external, stakeholders. And because they are not connected, there is no opportunity for a cross-system innovation. There is no that kind of capability, and there is no scale transformation capability. And we changed that approach to this. Here again, the service, the citizen and private sector get benefit from the services. Here there's a new layer. There are the services are here not in this level. I mean the silo level. And there are also the citizens and private sectors become ecosystems with different roles, and the services are provided to them. And as you see, there are startups, universities, SMEs, information. There is an information sharing platform, and all those silos are connected via service management. And those service management uses the capabilities within the business layer, and those capabilities are managed in this layer. And the technology and digital asset management is also done with an administration shell, which is very central, and it is responsible from the interoperability between the silos and all those components, technologies, data within that silos, and they are managed together. By the way, all these three are integrated via governance mechanism. It is not just in the state level, but also in the national level, because some services are provided in the state level and also in the national level, and some services are provided just in the national level. So the governance mechanism is prepared in two layers, in state and in the national level. To summarize, the city data, it comes out of silos and used in many different problems, and conceptual separation of data. And as I said, the service and service provisioners, they are implemented. And by getting data out of the back office with different roles of citizens and private sectors coming together as an ecosystem, there's an external triggered innovation. And they create new markets for data and services. They develop public service together with citizens, SMEs, social entrepreneurs, and they create new values with the data. And also because of the interoperability within the back office, there is also an internally triggered innovation. So the services are improved and become more integrated, and the resource was optimized. And as a result, there's a citywide rapid change capability. It is not within the silo, but now it is a citywide change. Here, for the solution, we consider two approaches. One is integrated systematic planning. As I said, we have a reference smart city architecture. This is the very first level of it. This represents this illustration. There are like smart mobility, like information security, like smart energy economy, smart buildings, smart security, etc. We have also some governance related capabilities like strategy management, policy management, business management, integrated service management. So we will prepare the strategy regarding this reference architecture, and also we assess the cities and also the national level Turkish performance related with this reference architecture, since all the actions are based, they are also related, all the smart city projects are also related with this reference architecture. So we could easily assess the performance with a systematic manner. And we know how each city handles smart city concept. Again, with this common architecture, reference architecture, and we can also, evaluate what is, if the work, if they are successful or not, if everything is okay or not. It enables us. And the second approach we consider is being interoperable and having integrated solutions. And we know, as we said, the cities should solve their problems and produce benefits, not products. And they need to develop an integrated approach to smart solutions. And a single product is not enough, but rather integrated solutions will help these for being more efficient, more sustainable, and more successful. So these need to make sure that they get their infrastructure right and build a system that allows them to take advantage of open architectures that do not limit them to a particular supplier, but help adding new solutions to the system as it grows and evolves. Because you need to have a flexible, system. You can then easily change if something happens that is not foreseen before. You should have that flexibility. And here is the Turkish history in terms of smart city. In the very beginning of about 20 years ago, in our national development plan, there are some strategies in that, and there's also a prioritized transformation program in the regarding the smart city, and then there were some institutional level smart city policies and strategies, and then they were not enough. It is considered as a thematic strategy, and it is on a national level. By the way, it is the world's fourth national strategy, and the action plan is the world's third national strategy. And now it is the last year of the strategy. It is being being re-prepared for the next 5 years, and the Ministry of Urbanization is the policy maker, and they perform the monitoring and evaluating activities, and the city level, they also monitor the city level strategies, and everything is being interoperable and connected in terms of strategy there. But smart city is not a easy thing. Its concept is also very complex. So there are lots of changes to the strategy, even to the actions, even to the metrics. But if there were not a strategy, then we will not have that opportunity to talk about the same thing with the same reference architecture. So the strategy with the architecture, with the maturity model, with the monitoring and evaluating model and system, they all enabled the stakeholders to, come to the same table and talk about the same thing, same concepts with same ontology. So we really get benefit from that national level strategy and action plan. This is the end of my presentation. I thank you for your understanding and patience. If you have, also I thank to all the organizers. If you have any questions, I would like to have.
Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Since talking about smart cities, have you conducted any research or analysis after this smart city related interventions, that what is its impact in terms of GHG reductions, carbon emission reductions in a particular city?
I am very sorry. I really cannot, hear. The voice is very, low. Is it possible whether to, write it in the chat box or, find another way? I just couldn't hear.
Okay, I will repeat the question. I am asking, have you conducted any analysis or study on the impact of smart cities in terms of carbon emission reductions in a city? GHG reductions, greenhouse gas effect.
I really am sorry, I couldn't hear. Maybe writing down the question if it is possible.
Is Dr. Lulia, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear, but the voice is really very low and, could you please repeat now? It may be a bit.
Okay, I'm asking, right, okay. I'm asking that these interventions of smart cities, have you done any research that how much carbon emission have been reduced in the cities or its impact on the GHG reductions in a particular city?
Yeah, we have lots of, measurements in terms of those, in fact, as I said, we have 3 groups of indicators. One is the current state of the city. For instance, in our maturity model, there's a smart, there's a capability about the, the quality of the air, for instance. And we have some stations in the cities measuring the, for instance, the particle levels in the air. And then use, and we have, in fact, many other indicators related with the quality of the air. And we make a mathematical model related with those, metrics. Also, we prepare some actions, for instance, related with the quality of the air. In one of our cities, the farms are very near to the city. There's a city called Konya. The farms were very near to the city. There's a 10-kilometer distance between the city and the farms. For instance, it affected the city quality of air. So the local government make a regulation that the farms should be, this. I couldn't remember how far, but they prepared the regulation, And with that mathematical model, beforehand, before the regulation, before they publish the regulation, they measure whether that action, whether that regulation will affect the quality of the air, will it improve? They first validate it with that mathematical model, then they guarantee that it improves the quality of air, and then that regulation was published. In fact, this was 3 or 4 years ago. Then after, that model is used for other cities. 11 cities are, selected, which have a better air quality, and they, customize that mathematical model to their cities, because every city has its own, current states, etc. But they calibrate that model, or they customize that model, and now, for instance, for that project, I know that not just the quality of air improved, but for instance, the patient percentage in terms of COHA. There's a illness related with the lungs. It's called COHA. So it decreased. So this is the way how Turkey approaches smart city. We do not, we don't, in our policies, we do not act in an agile way. We first, select the problem, make a mathematical model, then after, invest in the infrastructure required, then get data, put it in a mathematical model, and find out the actions, then validate that actions, see the results, and use that, system to the other cities which have the same problem definition. And we do not act in an agile way, because those infrastructures are very expensive, and they may not also be solution to that city. Unfortunately, that is the case, and you should validate beforehand.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for that valuable elaboration on the topic. Next, I would like to briefly introduce our next speaker, Dr. Indica De Souza, Vice President of Huawei Technologies Lanka Company Private Limited, Sri Lanka. Mr. Indica De Souza is the Vice President of Huawei Technologies Lanka Company Private Limited. In this role, Mr. Indica is responsible for the Sri Lanka Huawei enterprise business and provides leadership to the enterprise business group. Mr. Indica is a seasoned, vibrant, and result-oriented professional with 27 years of rich experience covering digital ICT solutions, marketing, innovation, development, integration, and marketing development with prestigious organizations. Currently, Indica serves as a member of the Functional Committee on General Education of the Presidential Task Force, the Standing Committee on Accreditation and Quality Assurance for Higher Education Sector in Sri Lanka, Vice Chairman of ICT Skills Council of Sri Lanka, Vice Chairman of FITIS, Federation of Information Technology Industry, Sri Lanka, and a Council member of the Computer Society of Sri Lanka. Indica is qualified in marketing from the Chartered Institute of Marketing and MBA from SNC University, Switzerland. Join me in welcoming Mr. Indica De Souza on stage to speak about the smart city with all things sensing, connected, and intelligent. Stage is yours.
Thank you for that introduction. So I think we are 30 minutes roughly late behind schedule. I'll probably try to catch up some time from that. So the speaker before me gave a perspective of the need by the smart cities and why it is evolving, what technologies has been used, etc. So my discussion points will be maybe little different, but we'll try to capture what we're talking about and why the smart cities, what we call, is required. So even Dr. Varma spoke about the disaster or disaster management, etc. So this all links together when we are talking from a holistic point of view from a smart city, how the technology has been used and for the benefits of the people. So when you're looking at the overall objective of the what we call the sustainable development goals, whereas there are three key things. So this is the most concept I actually build on, right? So it's about increased access of information. So this is the primary factor, right? Then to do that, you will have connectivity between people, organizations, etc. Like data has to be shared on that. With that, obviously, the increase of productivity and resource efficiency will happen. So this is primarily fundamentally like everything will be done, where the technology actually which is coming into play. Further building on, looking at three priorities of this, when we narrow it down. One is the technology. So we have to make sure that the right technologies have been used. We're talking about AI, data mining, artificial like cloud, mobile devices, etc. Then when you have these technologies, you need to have the right applications. So speakers before me talking about different applications coming in, there are certain ones are costlier, certain ones are cheaper. So we need to make sure that the right applications are built for the right solution. Then you may have the right technology, you may have the right applications, but you have skills. So people need to be skilled enough to use these technologies. So specifically like the digital skills, as an example, we say you have a smart vision system that it will trigger an alarm in your smartphone, and if it doesn't know how to operate it, or like when it can be yourself, that if you don't have the right skill sets, or it can be individual, it can be organization, that if it doesn't have that, you will be not able to make it. So these are fundamental things, even when you're talking about the high level of the smart cities digital system which is going in, these fundamentals has to be looked at. So I will not spend much time on this, but again, we are a generation which is living through the fourth industrial revolution. Like the topic of this conference is all about the fourth industrial revolution. But I'm looking at IoT to AI, everything is actually getting built, and now we're talking about the fifth industrial revolution, which is talking about the collaboration. All these things are coming together and making the best thing. So now we are living through the fourth industrial revolution, but still we are looking at the fifth industrial revolution. Discussions specifically in the technology industry that I'm coming from is already initiated, all these discussions have been started. Key few things. Now, when you're looking at evolving the technology, things are like say nowadays the way things are measured or how the mechanisms are looked at is little different or anyway. One of the key things is there's an infrastructure which is built on, which is we are talking about the broadband, data centers, we're talking about cloud computing, big data, IoT, artificial intelligence, all these things have been built. This is going to be the infrastructure layer. On top of that, which is we need to build applications. And when you're looking at the applications, one of the key things are like most of these are sensing right now. It can be starting from your phone or smartphone, which you are wearing, or the IoT things, devices what you're wearing, it's sensing things. Like when we're talking about autonomous vehicles, etc., expect to come in, this will be sensing things. Right? Then when you sense it, that has to be connected. So you need to use the technologies like the 3D, 4D, and we're talking about 5G, fiberization, etc., which has to be connected. Then on the back end, when the sensing information comes through the connectivity, it has to be intelligence. Right? So this will basically analyze by itself and will give you the reading of say an autonomous vehicle. It will give you the reading on the back end, like how to drive where the traffic or the people crossing the road, etc. So this is like all the things has to be intelligent, which is there the big data, AI, all this is coming into play. So this is how the backend technology will work, and this is the fundamental principle now when you're looking at the global giants how they're working, and this is where the adoption is coming to. So I'll quickly go through. If you really look at it, when you look at the 3G, people thought this is for the video call. it was not the case. The 3G was primarily, iPhone was like, created a new dimension altogether. But if you look at 4G came in, people thought that is for mobile live video. It's not the case. When you're looking at it, this is where the Facebooks or the YouTubes of the world actually came in and changed the dimension of the way we work, way we live, right? Apps came in. And the 5G is coming in. People thought this is a VR, robot, auto cars, exactly. This is going to be the case. Still we don't know. This is early curve, we don't know what exactly this is going to be, right? So now this is where we need to think through. Like people who are into research, who are looking at new solutions, or like we are people like me who coming from the IT industry, the multinationals or the bigger organizations. So this is where the game change is going to be. What this means or what 5G will transform. So technology is evolving and we are at the tipping point of this. So I will try to give a perspective. Like we are talking about the digital cities, which is what like getting online. We're talking about smart cities, which is getting into IoT. Now actually we are going into cognitive cities. So it's about autonomously acquiring with sensors social interaction data and applying the cognitive process of thinking, recognizing, remembering, judging, and problem solving. So it gives you the solution. So this is where it works. Right now, this is not like a roadmap, it is in practice. In real world, it's not like cases, in real cities, this is in practice. So probably few cases, the time permits, I'll be able to share that with some data points. The point you asked the question, like with the apparently there's a measurement or there's improved. There are some data points in some large cities, which is like maybe 20-30 million people living, which is I have on some examples of such. So if you really look at it, which is actually we call this is something called digital twins or intelligent twins. Now you have one which is the layer. If you layer it, now you are having the economy, then you have the intelligent layer, which is the computing, which is coming in, then the public layer, then you have the activities, which is we are talking about the smart buildings, smart farming, all that coming in. Then you have the smart infrastructure. So this is the what you call the full stack, physical full stack, and you have the technology which is coming in the middle. Which talks about the AI, cloud, computing, connectivity, digital power. Like again, we heard about this power grid, etc., which is digital, which is going green power. Because when you're talking about all this will have a lot of power consumption coming in specifically from the data centers, etc. So this is where the technology come in and as a technology stack we call it, which is the physical full stack and how this can get evolved and how it is getting transformed. So this is a case which is with on Shenzhen in one of the cities in China, which is about population about 20 million plus. This is equivalent to our nation, which is in 2021. When you're looking at the digital economy size, I mean, Shenzhen is definitely the digital economy is huge because that is where most of our digital things are. Whatever the digital devices use, 90% probably coming from that place. Like starting from the iPhone, etc. So the economy is so big. But when you're looking at they got full 5G coverage by August 2020. More than 46,000 base stations, like integrated with systems and applications, so many. Looking at from the safe side, what they're talking about, safe side, there are 20% less crime rate 3 years in a row. So the crime rate is coming down. So this is real evidence we are talking about. 80x more efficient inspection on grid smart power, right? So look at the amount of saving right now in Sri Lanka. We would have experience like the power factor that they are going through. How the saving will help you in that way, right? The airport, which is talking about average stand allocation for a time of reduction from 4 hours to 1 minute. Look at the difference it is bringing in. The smart service, 85% services are requested online, 55% less paperwork. Now, the time people will be spending waiting in queues, etc., will definitely have a big impact. So this is real case, which is like last year implemented and which is going in. I have a quick video.
In just 40 years, Shenzhen has transformed from a small fishing village into a stunning modern metropolis. It's now one of China's top cities across all major indicators. In 4 decades, Shenzhen has become a marvel of industry, urbanization, and modernization. Its digital economy is now worth over 2.7 trillion Chinese yuan, ranking #1 in China. As of August 2020, Shenzhen has achieved full standalone 5G coverage across the city, with more than 45,000 base stations. It's leading the 5G era. Further advancing the Kunpeng ecosystem, Shenzhen is setting the gold standard for smart cities with an incredible range of competitive applications. It's a city that unleashes the full value of human knowledge, sparks creativity and innovation, and breathes new life into the digital and AI ecosystem. Stories of success stretch as far as the eye can see. Shenzhen is leading smart industry on all fronts. In smart governance, an intelligent hub made of big data centers and a smart city management platform has broken down information silos between city management systems. In smart policing, an agile smart crime prevention and control system makes policing services more responsive and constructive. In smart grids, 5G and AI ensure a stable supply of electricity. In smart transport, Shenzhen Airport leads the industry with its unmatched efficiency. In smart healthcare, smart and mobile telehealth applications make healthcare more accessible. Shenzhen is pushing the limits of 5G, cloud, and AI to make a smart city even smarter.
So that is a real life case, which is not a dream anymore, which is being practicing, and there are sheer numbers of measurement which is giving in how the transformation is happening, right? So where the key factor is all the elements are connected and it's sensing as I said, there are a lot of analytics that we use. So if you look at from a technology point of view, stack what is being used, talking about the governance, customer centric services, then the AI enabled intelligence. So if you really go into it, when you look at the bottom things, all the terminals and sensors which is there, starting from transportation to facial recognition to fire to emergency services, whatever the link is there. Then you have a IT infrastructure, obviously. Then you have the databases, etc., which is going in, as example, looking at a GIS database to going into all the databases, right? You have the platforms, then obviously you have the applications which is coming in, the e-government, what you call the parking portal, smart public transport, etc. So technologically, this is very much possible. So it's how to put these all together and making it to practice. So this is how it will look like the monitoring center. So this is the pictures of real monitoring centers which they are running in, and this is how the monitoring is happening. Right? Even in in Colombo, we have this surveillance doing not this sophisticated, but how the monitoring is happening. Now they are looking at getting into facial recognition, number plate recognition, etc. Even in Sri Lanka. So the state of the art, which is getting in the awareness, the monitoring, the decision making, all done here. It can be a situation of natural disaster, or it can be a theft, or it can be accident, emergency, anything, right? So all this is being done. Even it go up to a level they create a trigger if you have a public gathering, more than number of people, you can create alarm, etc., which is technologically much possible. Then monitoring center will give you those triggers. So this is like a example of how this technical stack and how they're using AI, the data modeling is done, and all those areas of airport, grid, what we talk about, vehicle, even illegal behavior detection. So these are things which is common in most part of the world, specifically in Asian context, right? So all this is being done. I'm going a little faster because interest of the time to try to catch up. If there are any questions, please stop me and ask on that. And I'm happy to share the link as well, so any references can be taken in. So this is where in real practice, as I said before, which is going in. So now we break into little pieces. Like when we talk about the bigger smart city again. Now we say within the smart city, you have the smart buildings, which is we say one component of that, right? So when you're looking at one example of how energy management can be done using these the within the building, which is you are talking about analyzing it like then the central management system and the controls. So you have the sensor bars, etc. Like when the people are not using it, how the AC will go down, how using the sensors, the power will get switched off, etc. So when you're looking at the benefit what you're getting it, there'll be more than we're talking about this more than 10% cost saving per year, and that can be big. And the wastage of what exactly people energy what we're wasting, and companies do that same. The smart building will definitely give you one. That's possibly one angle of it. So this is one more example again. What you call the border control, say how your parameters can be monitored using the intelligent cameras, etc. And different alerts can be given, depending on your security, the strength, sensitivity what you have on that. So sorry, going back. From this to this, there's a lag. So this is again the monitoring of these smart cameras. This is talking about the facial recognition, license plate recognition. This is how the traffic management is happening. So these are really much practicing in most part of the world right now. And the traffic or the traffic congestions can be reduced, as well as people will be more disciplined on using this kind of environment. And this is a case of looking at your facial recognition using especially for your office entry. It can be public transport, or it can be railway station. How the letters can be done, and also how to reduce there are a lot of security guards cost, which is definitely no human intervention. It's about the machine will take you and it will recognize your face and it will allow you to move like that. So these are real-time cases which is right now, and it gives you a clear indication of how many in terms of money how it will serve, and the security aspects as well. So this is a case of where the which is we talk about the parking simplifies your vehicle parking, etc. And again there's no human intervention. It will give you all those aspects what is required. So this is again using drones. So this elements of the smart cities are breaking down pieces which say how the drones they are using real-time traffic analysis has been done, and how the traffic can be diverted, etc. To minimize the congestion, specifically in major cities. How this is being done. Little bit of a different thing, which is again, say technology has been used on open areas, parks, etc., where recreation is happening, where especially where children activity areas. So this is where the parent is not around, there will be surveillance on it. There has to be emergency environment when there's a situation, people can or kids can address it. Like that, all the elements is using technology, all these cameras, identification, smart cameras has been used, and this has been used on those elements as well. So I wanted to give you a bit of a perspective on the technology how it's being used. Like say this is the unarmed unmanned vehicles, or autonomous vehicles being used, security inspections, smart retail, delivery, and also lately we will be using for academic as well. Because people can't attract, and these autonomous vehicles became very handy in most part of the cities. Which is they use for spraying, etc. There's no human intervention, and it is largely used in most of the cities right now. I'll speak this. I spoke about a little bit on the smart car parking again, like here it will give you an indication where the parking slot is available. In Sri Lanka also there are some apps which is available in some parking slots, which the customers will be able to have the benefit of that. Then again, this is something which is in Sri Lanka that lying out, not in full scale, what they call the smart lighting pole. So this again one unit which is you have a video surveillance, but you can have the digital advertising, and also this is something which is not used, like sometimes you can see even Colombo State during the midday the power is on, but power is scarcity right now. So these kind of the units coming in, it has multiple benefits. Plus, there's say CCTV extra can be plugged in, used in solar. So this is where when you put all these components together on a smart city or digital city, what we call it, or getting into cognitive conflict, whereas you will get all those benefits, and the country as well as the intelligence will be able to require. So this is probably want to talk about. This is again something which is lately being used for the pandemic control. I think you had a question about whether the pandemic control data can be used. So here they use the management system, like when you enter in QR code can be done, and centrally it will be managed. There's a command and control center, and they will know where if there's somebody is infected, like when the PCR is reported, we know they can identify where that person is, and accordingly there will be notification to the people around that such person is there, or when your neighbor is infected, so your neighbors will know that there's an infection. So like that, there's a lot of isolation is happening, and this is a technology commonly used. In Sri Lanka also we have the QR, but we don't have the notification process backend, which is being created. But these some of the mature markets, this is being done very in a very optimized manner, and a lot of benefits has been requested now, which is being got for the public on this. So with that, I will. This is something again talking about the what you call the smart water, how the monitoring of the rivers and the lakes, water pollution, etc., can be monitored. So going back to my theme, it's about sensing, connecting, and to be intelligent on the back end. So the few examples which I went through quickly on different scenarios actually gives you a perspective. Using that method, we'll go to attract data with using different technologies, and we'll feed back to the back end, and we'll go to analyze, and definitely we will take precautions along the way. So with that, I will conclude my presentation, and hope I didn't exceed much time. So I think we are getting into lunch with after one more presentation from Dr. Asper. Thank you again, and if there are any questions, I'll be around, as well as happy to take up any questions. Thank you. So I have a question after. Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Well, that was a quite fascinating demonstration. Thank you very much, Dr. Utilization. Now I take the opportunity to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Ajit Pascoe, Professor, University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka, and President, Sri Lanka Electronics Manufacturers and Exporters Association, Sri Lanka, will be joining us online. Dr. Ajit Pascoe is a professor of Department of Electronic and Telecommunication Engineering at the University of Moratuwa. He is a member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers since 1996 and a member of the Association of Computing Machinery since 2001. His research interests include computer vision, image processing, intelligent transportation systems, e-commerce, human visual system, and genomic science signal processing. He received his PhD from the University of Tokyo in the field of computer vision. Join me in welcoming Dr. Ajit Pascoe to elaborate about smart cities, challenges in cost-benefit analysis. After you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to all of you. I hope I'm audible. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. So let me start my presentation. As already mentioned, I'll be talking about something that I feel actually is really important in smart cities, the cost benefit analysis, particularly from the point of view of developing countries, the region that we are living in. So I'll be briefly actually walking you through some maybe thought-provoking like scenarios where we will be actually trying to understand what makes the cost benefit analysis difficult, or what are the possible solutions in addressing those challenges. So let me start with basically throwing some questions, like since we are talking about the industrial industry 4.0 and also smart cities. One thing that is very clear is industry 4.0 is evolving much more rapidly than smart cities. If you try to ask why that particular evolution is happening so rapidly, and why not actually smart cities, particularly even in this part of the world, one clear answer to that one is where cost benefit analysis actually is kind of straightforward when you're looking at industry 4.0. So we will discuss a bit more like about that one later in the presentation. Then why do we need cost benefit analysis? Obviously, because we are looking for investment in smart cities, and could be public funds, or could be private funds, or maybe public-private partnership. And all these like different sources of funds require some sort of a proper cost benefit analysis in order to go ahead with a particular project. So the CBA, or cost benefit analysis, actually is where the prime focus actually will be during the evaluation of a smart city project. So this is actually what we are talking about in more detail here. One thing that we can ask is, CBA is not something new at all, or can we use the same approach that we use in any kind of a cost benefit analysis to smart cities? That is something that will be interesting to look at, because the complexities involved in smart cities in its inherent manner. Source of funds, basically public-private partnership, and particularly whenever the government funds or public funds are involved, or public-private partnership, then again element of public funding actually is there. Is question of how do we quantify the cost, or how do we quantify the benefits, actually most importantly, because cost actually will be borne by whoever who is planning to implement the solutions. But how can we quantify, either in maybe quantify the benefits, or can we actually have a list of qualitative benefits that can be quantified in some form or another? Then the challenge primarily is the inherent complexities of cities, which again I will go into a bit of detail later in the presentation. So the last question that I want to actually propose is whether smart cities can be driven by private sector investment alone. When I say alone, probably not in the holistic sense, but at the beginning. So do we need to always wait for public sector funding, or can we follow an incremental approach to basically implement smart cities by actively involving private sector in areas where they can contribute directly, where the benefits or cost benefit analysis actually is kind of straightforward. So these are the questions I'm actually trying to answer within this short presentation. So let me, I think most of the speakers have already talked about these different areas that smart cities are covering, but for the sake of completeness, let me also actually put this slide. You can see basically we are looking at about 5 different areas. We are looking at energy, mobility, the social infrastructure, water, building, and homes. And so there are many. Some of these areas can be looked at in a kind of isolated manner, or some of these are connected with so many other areas. So they are, even though they are listed under different areas, but the impact of that could be like connected to other areas as well. For example, like energy, intelligent transportation systems, alternative fuel vehicles will be having a direct impact on, let's say, for example, like energy as far as the city service providers are concerned. Then you may ask the question, okay, why smart cities? So what we are looking primarily is ultimate outcome that we are looking at in any smart city project is the quality of life improvement. And that quality of life improvement actually comes from the perception of the quality of life comes from various areas as far as the citizen is concerned, or maybe even actual organization is concerned. If you apply quality of life to that particular organization, but it's mostly a citizen-based thing, citizen-based metric. So these quality of life metrics primarily coming from, for example, like safety of a citizen, then the time spent on various aspects, the healthcare, the environment that you live in, connectedness, and job security, and all the cost of living. And all these different aspects will have a direct implication or direct impact of quality of life. If we look at the smart city project from a more outcome-based approach, we are looking at the outcome, the exact outcome that will accrue, or a particular benefit that will directly accrue to a citizen. I think it will be more convincing, more easier to do the analysis rather than just looking at from what I refer to as a more like input-based approach. We'll also basically talk about some of the frameworks that are currently being used to evaluate smart cities. Here we really need to look at is, if the quality of life is a final metric that we are looking at, then obviously it is a final outcome. So can we look at all smart city projects from more of an outcome-based approach, where each of these aspects can be evaluated quantitatively as well as qualitatively, and that would actually give us a very clear approach to do a cost-benefit analysis. And secondly, whenever you have a smart city project, we are trying to actually create public value. That's all about basically quality of life improvement is basically creating public value. But if the investment is coming from, let's say, for example, like from a private sector, or maybe from a public-private partnership, then the ROI for the investment need to be properly looked at. Okay? So the public benefits can be very clear. But how about the ROI for the source of funds, or basically for the investor? And if you do not see a proper ROI, because of the complexities inherently in smart city projects, in certain smart city projects, some may be more straightforward, but most of these are highly complex. And if the ROI is unclear, and that project or basically that particular activity actually can get stalled. I mean, that is actually what we see in this part of the world, where smart city projects are often being talked about. But after certain evaluation or certain point of that process, everything actually gets suddenly stopped, or basically drags extremely slowly. So this is something that we need to look at, how we can expedite, and that expediting part actually lies in how fast, or basically how fast we can convince all the stakeholders about the cost benefit analysis. I mean, directly be open about the costs involved, and also benefits that will accrue to the citizens as well as other stakeholders. So the question is cost benefit analysis, and obviously quantification is an integral part of that one. And since other presenters have already talked about it, let me briefly talk about this as well. Some key parameters as far as citizens are concerned in quality of life aspects is basically, for example, like traveling time. How can we reduce traveling time from point A to point B? The air quality, the environment that we are living in, and even though it might not be like a key focus in this part of the world as such, but going forward, this becomes extremely important. And more space for recreational activities as a result of, again, implementing smart city solutions that can free up space in different places. For example, let's say mobility as a service, that will free up a lot of spaces, which can be again put it into the citizens' benefit. Okay? So that linkage is quite clear. So as long as the linkage is clear, then convincing the public who ultimately bear the cost of a smart city project, it will be easier for implementation. And also what we need to look at is, as I said, different stakeholders. It could be city administrators or city service providers who provide various services to to that city. And if you look at some examples from a global perspective, two examples that I can highlight where benefits are direct. And as a result, I mean, you don't need to really question whether that investment is required or not. For example, like in Ontario, Canada, there was 1.9 billion Canadian dollar investment for smart metering. And the benefits are very much clear. So there is actually no resistance. I wouldn't say no resistance as such, but it's easier to pass that, get the approval. And then citywide installation of CCTVs in Singapore. Again, a direct impact is basically reduce crime rate, urban crime rate. Citizens value those things, and they will not probably at the very beginning might be hesitant to approve or basically to agree with the costs associated with that one. Once the benefits start accruing, and that resistance actually might go away. So how do we minimize the resistance at the very beginning? The answer for that one is, how do we really do the cost benefit analysis and make that findings open to all the stakeholders. So these two tables actually, the next two slides actually give an idea about the benefits and the complexities associated with measuring that. So as you can see, these benefits and also basically source of investments, you can see the shaded box actually indicate indirect benefits where there is no direct measure is available to quantify it. And so whenever the shaded points or shaded like areas or indirect benefits are more, the question actually comes, how do we evaluate? How do we evaluate and how do we quantify this, or basically at least some measure that can convince the administrators and also the public who ultimately bear the cost that this is worthy of investment. As you can see, the different aspects. It could be related to the public transportation. Okay, you might implement smart transportation or intelligent transportation systems that could directly bring revenue to the administrators, but at the same time, what would be the benefit to the users or to the public? Okay? It could be in terms of traveling time, or it could be in terms of like overall lack of congestion, because like with the user charges, or what you call toll charges, the number of vehicles entering the city might become low. So the indirect benefits need to be assessed and projected to the discussions in a way that all stakeholders understand that. So, for example, like direct benefits are quite clear, and the challenge that we have in the evaluation is mostly about these indirect benefits or indirect costs that is associated with these smart city projects. And the smart city projects can span all areas like transportation, telecommunication, healthcare, all aspects. And similarly for the on the cost side, same issue actually is there. So how do we measure the cost associated with a smart city project? Or is it only direct cost, which is actually quite straightforward? But what about the indirect cost? Now, if you look at the CCTV surveillance, okay, there is a worldwide, like let's say 2 schools of thought. Okay, why do we need surveillance? Obviously, there is a privacy breach. Privacy breach. There's indirect costs associated with that one. How significant is that indirect cost compared with the that we get from the CCTV surveillance? So these are things that need to be looked at. And basically convince the relevant stakeholders, particularly public, the importance of or basically highlighting the benefits. That is, benefits are much more than costs. So can we quantify all of them? So how do we actually move forward in a project where the indirect cost measure actually is much more significant. Somebody might say, okay, direct costs are clear, so implementation costs actually can be given, but how about the indirect costs, not only in the short term, but in the medium and longer term? Okay, so this is where the real complexities or real challenges lie in smart city implementation, particularly from a developing country point of view, where a public actually has a say because of the, let's say, because of the democratic environment that we have in most of the countries. So the key point here is, I mean, you can see that much more than direct either cost or benefit, you will see a list of indirect costs or indirect benefits. So the challenge is, how do we take into account all of them and present the analysis in a way that is understandable to the major stakeholders, those who are funding the investment and those who ultimately get the benefits. So if you can focus on the desired outcomes or benefits and clearly put all data on the table so that everything is visible rather than hiding anything as such, and that would be a very clean way of getting approval. Probably might not be all, but from the major stakeholders, we can actually get approval easy when you see all information in one. So look at the impact assessment. So again, we looked at the benefits, direct as well as indirect benefits, and direct cost and indirect cost. Basically, again, we are looking at similarly the assessment of a smart city solution. How do we link out all these things into the social, economical, and environmental values within a defined context of that particular city? And as long as the citizens understand the value of a smart city solution, I think even though it is qualitative analysis, okay, we can most likely go forward with some projects. So this brings us to the next question. What are the frameworks or what are the ways that we can actually evaluate, even though we see a list of indirect and direct costs and benefits as such, but are there any frameworks out there which can be used for evaluating smart city projects? One of the probably some of the first that came out from European Union called EU Smart City Wheel, where the smart cities are directly linked to different aspects of smartness. For example, like smart economy, we talk about productivity, smart people, basically ultimately capacity building of the city community with high social and human capitals, smart governance, smart mobility, these are straightforward, smart environment, sustainability of the entire city, and smart living, livability, and the well-being. But some of the challenges are these are broad-based concepts. Okay? So how do we actually get these different elements into an evaluation framework? So the EU Smart City Wheel actually is one of the first attempts to bring those into a connected place and see how the evaluation can be done. Next one, let me focus on the more comprehensive framework, multi-dimensional smart city framework that is more oriented towards the desired outcomes, where you can see the desired outcome is depending on whatever the project that you have, and it involves the productive innovation from the economical point of view, governance and planning, and the livability and well-being of the city or primarily citizens, and looking at what drives the desired outcomes. If we can come up with the right policies and the technologies and connect them with the community understanding of the benefits that we like to, then the framework can exist. Again, this is not to say that this framework actually will give you a direct a quantitative figure about a particular smart city project as such, but this gives us a framework for us to start evaluating how to bring different aspects of the smart cities into a single framework for evaluation purposes. So this is the input are the primary assets and the process and the outcomes. And here, one of the key focus actually is on the desired outcomes. So we might actually have proposed, we see many smart city projects being proposed, but the desired outcomes are not sometimes very clear. So as long as the outcomes are clear, then we can actually look at the possibilities of implementing these projects in a much faster manner. So let me also talk about I talk about the cities being inherently complex, and the smart city solutions cannot be done in isolation. So we are talking about different aspects of smart cities, mobility, energy, and there are a lot of data available with different organizations. It may be public or private. Can we make use of those existing data to make the cost benefit analysis evaluation easier? Now, for example, let's say again, there's another question of basically data ownership. If you look at the telecom operators, they process a huge amount of data relate to the way the citizens behave, or the way that the transportation network actually works. Can we make use of this data in a coherent manner to evaluate the cost benefit of a given smart city project? Now, one of the biggest problems in the cost benefit analysis is we don't have data. Okay, there is particularly to assess the indirect measures, indirect benefits or indirect costs. So, can we make use of this data that lies at different places to make this cost benefit analysis process much straight easier? As you can see in this figure, I want to bring your attention to the one part that says the blind spot of the urban data economy. So there are so much of data that is collected at different places, but these data actually not being used like in connection with the others, and they lie on their own, probably not being used, not being used only for one specific aspect, but not for other connected purposes as such. So the connectedness is extremely important of these different projects, and identification of data where data is available, and then you talk about basically the challenges bringing all those into the same table. The question that I would like to pose again is because of the inherent difficulties in cost benefit analysis of particularly public funded projects, is it the way forward as such? So can we look at, for example, how about the private sector initiatives? Okay, what makes the city smart is how the cities feel about different aspects of their day-to-day lives. So if you look at, let's say, for example, like retail, the logistics, healthcare, which can be totally driven by the private sector. And as long as the citizens feel there is a improvement in these services and being intelligent without actually you can do your shopping, or you can do your like whatever the logistics related activities, or the taking care of the healthcare in a very much convenient manner without wasting time, and also without spending that much of money, then that also brings the element of smartness into the citizens. So the point that I want to actually highlight is that smart city project need not be just public all the time, but can start with some of these aspects that are connected to citizens directly, like to the day-to-day living. So that would be a good starting point to promote the smart cities. If these things are already in place, then it will not be that much harder to push the other, let's say, for example, the bigger smart city projects that involve public investment. For example, in energy and environment or transportation, which might actually require investment from the public, or it could be a public-private partnership. So the important aspect is this incremental approach to a smart city concept, or promotion of the smartness actually is not linked to the public infrastructure as such, but those connected with the individual citizens' daily life. And that's something that they want to highlight here. Again, from a cost benefit analysis, because retail or private sector is driving this one, and the cost benefit actually is directly attached to them, or basically they know how to do the cost benefit because it is a private sector driven, and our ROI is very clear. And if ROI actually is not there, then obviously private sector will not invest. So starting with these areas where there is a direct impact on citizens, but not probably that we are thinking about the smart city concept as such in the traditional manner, like public sector involvement is considered as kind of a must. But this is kind of different way of thinking, different way of actually looking at it. At the beginning, I actually mentioned the industry 4.0 is rapidly evolving, rapidly actually taken up by not only the developed countries, but also developing countries. And the reason is quite obvious. And we are talking about industry 4 in a localized context. It could be a one industry, one organization, and cost benefit analysis actually is straightforward, even though it is not easy as such, but not as complex as in smart cities. The moment that you look at the smart city, which has much wider scope with multiple different administration mechanisms and totally autonomous like entities out there, the whole operation actually becomes the process of cost benefit analysis has become extremely complex and making the process slow as well. So one solution that we can have is, as I said earlier, can we have private sector led approach to expedite the development of smart city solutions, and also how the governance or how the public sector or the governments actually can take part in that solution is promoting the open architecture. I think this was mentioned by a previous speaker as well, to avoid vendor lock-ins and also improve wider industry participation, so that everybody knows there is a part of that entire opportunity actually is available to them as well. So this is just I think I'm running out of time. Giving the overall picture or the holistic view of smart city and the industry 4 where they lie. Industry 4 is very much localized, and the smart city obviously actually has much wider scope. But bringing them together is definitely possible. Again, subject to the challenges that we talked about earlier in cost benefit analysis. So with this one, the challenges and the presence of alternatives, like this is particularly I want to actually highlight the use of public funds. For example, let's say we are talking about connectedness, and there is a lot of when you talk about connectedness, there is in many smart cities we see the like citywide fiber network, and primarily because that can carry a lot of services. But when we, for example, if the same is to be done by a developing country. City in the developing country, can we afford that citywide fiber network, or do we need to, or can we look at alternative connectedness like mechanisms, like for example, like wireless or 6G that is coming in, and which has actually much more reachability to the citizen rather than the fiber network. So when the public investment is required. So this alternative strategy is something is important, because we often see that the smart city projects are what we refer to as a supply push, or like somebody is pushing the solution. So the government actually sometimes may be forced to accept, or we see supply push type of projects. But the evaluation, I think it's the responsibility of the government or the governing councils or city councils or whoever. To look at the benefits, look at the alternative arrangement where the same like outcome can be achieved. That's again something that we need to properly keep in mind. That might be much lower cost. The reachability and the connectivity can be given through wireless means without having all the fiber networks. But then again, there will be associated merits and demerits those approaches as well. So in conclusion, I want to actually highlight the point that the cost benefit analysis from a smart city project point of view, where there is a wider linkages with so many different areas, is definitely challenging, and the complexities are too much. So purely a quantitative approach to evaluating smart city solutions can only delay implementation, and obviously whatever the benefits that will accrue to the public or citizens can get delayed as a result of that one, particularly when the public funds are used this quantitative approach will have its limitations. So how do we bring the qualitative aspect into the picture or to the table, and how do we convince that qualitative benefits to the public is something that that is the challenging part. And the solution for that one is the way that I see is the wider stakeholder consultation is much better way to handle the uncertainty related to the indirect measures of cost and benefits. As long as all these costs and benefits are laid on the table and widely discussed, the possibility of implementing a smart city, even with that uncertainty related to the costs and benefits, can actually go ahead. And finally, what I mentioned already mentioned, the private sector investment, and then probably public-private partnership, and finally, public sector investment is one way to look at in the developing country implementation of smart cities. But then again, one important aspect is the infrastructure investment. Obviously, is of high priority, which could be a public-funded or public-private partnership process. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to do this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If there are any questions from the audience, you are welcome to ask. Okay, so there are no questions. Now is the time for the lunch break. All the guests are invited to the cafeteria for lunch. We have to limit the lunch for 25 minutes due to time restraints. Sorry for the inconvenience. We will be starting the next session at 2:30 p.m. after the break. So enjoy your lunch and be on time.